Nu verkar jag ha lyckats starta inspelningen. Hello and most welcome to 1888 of the H series. We will today continue with the author of authentication by withstanding the coming great tribulation in the revelation of John. Last time we took a good look at the coming in and the coming out, going to the exterior and involving the interior. We also mentioned how Kelhoffer looks at a new grammar, or what you could say, rule number 2, and he thinks he's entering at the same place. This is part of the private language argument. The mistake he does is identical to the one that we have mentioned so many times before. It's the idea that you need no outer criterion to tell one thing from another, and that you can have a grammar that's flying in the air. A grammar there where witness, martyrs, some sort are getting another description. It's a bit like saying that a bachelor is a married man or something of the sort. Why is he married? Yeah, because we found a bachelor from 1552, and he was a bachelor and he was married. And there was also a new meaning given to what is persecution. All of a sudden, persecution is no longer the same. And that there could be only one murdered, like in the death of Antipasis. And that was then compared to segregation in the South and treatment of people by the Germans during the Second World War, and so on. Creating a new grammar not wedged or put into place of reality, instead hanging free or hanging freely. Everything needs to be firmly put in the place or the rich soil of action, of criterion. Just as in the previous lecture, 1887, when we went into the understanding that even if I were to see two things exactly from the same position, which is almost impossible, it would not mean that they would amount to the same visual sameness. There would be no criterion for sameness. Vision enough is simply not enough. So we need more. And as proven in the Michelson-Morley experiment, There is no constancy in shape, not even in physics. So it is definitely not an empirical problem, nor is it a psychological problem or a psychological understanding could not come from somewhere in within. And I continue where we left off, page 161. Elsewhere in his prophetic oracles, John uses different formulations to express the conditionality of future assurance of standing in Christ. A comparison of two other such conditional promises of a crown illustrates that John can depict this future reward as attainable, or alternatively, already having been attained and capable of being lost. Lost.
Lost.
Lost. I know your affliction, Thlipsis, and your poverty, even though you are rich. Rich. I know the slander on the part of those who say that they are Jews and are not, but are a synagogue of Satan. Do not fear what you are about to suffer. Miden fordon a melis paschen. Paschen. Beware. The devil is about to throw some of you into prison so that you may be tested. And for 10 days you will have affliction.
10 days. 10 days.
Be faithful until death, and I will give you the crown of life. Ton Stephanon tis Zois.
Zois.
Hold fast to what you have, so that no one may take away your crown. Krate o eches ina mides laviton Stephanon su.
Stephanos.
In these two oracles, a crown is the reward for resisting oppression from a synagogue of Satan, whether in Smyrna or Philadelphia. Whereas in Revelation 2:10b, the crown conditionally promised to the Smyrnans is the reward for having suffered, pascho, and is therefore in the eschatological future. The future.
Future. Future.
In 3:11b, John warns the Philadelphians to be beware of losing the crown that they have already received.
Oi, oi, oi. Losing. Losing. Losing.
David Orn and several other scholars argue persuasively that in 2:10b the reward is posthumous and carries connotations of struggle and victory in athletic contests. By vying in accordance with the rules of the competition, the believers who emerges victorious will receive this reward. Owen likewise observes that the warning in 3:11b is a metaphor for being disqualified in a contest. Edward Lose and Jürgen Roloff, however, unpersuasively dispute this connection, maintaining that a heavenly crown is different from a crown received in athletic competition. Their objection misses the point about the contest in which the believers battles oppression, temptation, and heretical teaching. In both oracles, future receipt of the crown or continued possession of the crown is based upon the condition of faithful resistance. Resistance!
No.
It is helpful, moreover, to compare with the Johannine tradition the prophet John's uncompromising call for resistance and endurance as requirement for future salvation. In this regard, Schissler Fiorenza aptly highlights a contrast between the soteriologies of Revelation and 1 John. Whereas Revelation expresses with Nikon, the one who conquers, a condition for future salvation of Christians and uses the past tense of the verb only for Christ. First John speaks of Christian victory not as a condition still to be accomplished, but as an act which is already achieved.
Hooray.
Hooray! According to John, 1 John 5, 4-5, for example, once present standing as a believer is a matter of certitude. Being born of God or believing in Jesus is tantamount to conquering the world. In particular, this illustrates that John's prophetic oracle in Revelation 2:3 reside within a different soteriological universe than that of justification by faith.
Okay.
Ouch, ouch, ouch. Oh dear. Instead of granting such assurance of salvation in the present, John offers justification by conquering or endurance. If the author of Revelation addresses some Christians who embraced such a Johannine or similar soteriology, the exhortations of Revelation 2:3 would have the effect of taking away a presumed standing and stipulating future requirements upon the attaining of that same standing. At least some Christians in Asia Minor who were not loyal to the prophet John may well have regarded his conception of soteriology as objectionable. Objectionable.
Objectionable.
As the following section shows, several of John's visions developed further and substantiate his soteriological argument. B. Visions of imminent tribulation and John's contingent offer of corroboration. 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 The previous section examined how John's prophetic oracles, Revelation 2-3, complement his depiction of his own suffering. The discussion now turns to John's vision. or visions. Where he further develops several motifs noted above in terms of future suffering that he expects and the standing that he posits for his fellow resistors. Resistors.
Sisters.
Maybe sisters. As suggested in the previous paragraph, this standing could be intended to replace a notion of believers' present assurance as asserted. For example, in the Johannine tradition, this section devoted to John's visions examines the following topics and passages. The fifth seal as divine judgment, vindicating the martyr's suffering, as well as the imprecatory prayers of the saints and the devastating effects of those prayers on the earth. White robes and palm branches as signs of victory for having endured the great tribulation. The judgment of wicked humanity as analogous to that of false prophets. The extraordinary power, endurance, and vindication of the two witnesses. Hurrah! The inevitability of suffering, of being conquered, and of vindication. Martyrdom as the capital necessary for acquiring the authority to share in the first resurrection to judge. Orthopraxis as a component of resistance and an indicator of one's standing as a believer. And divine consolation as postlude to vengeance and vindication.
Consolation.
The analysis to follow supports the argument that one of John's primary concerns in Revelation is to highlight the value of Christians' anticipated suffering. And thereby to encourage the faithful not to assimilate to the corrupting influences of pagan Rome. One, the fifth seal of divine judgment, vindicating the martyr's suffering and the imprecatory prayers of the saints on earth. 6:9-11 and 8:3-5. Revelation 5:6 states that Jesus is worthy to break the seals on the scrolls because he was slain. Oti es phagis. John ascribes special status to Jesus because of his suffering, and he does the same for Jesus's slain witness upon Jesus's breaking of the fifth seal.
Fifth seal.
When he opened the fifth seal, I saw under the altar the souls of those who had been slaughtered. Tas psychas ton esphagimenon. Because of dia, the word of God, and because of dia, the testimony, martyria, they had given. They cried out with a loud voice, Sovereign Lord, holy and true, how long will it be before you judge, krino, and avenge, ekdikeo, our blood on the inhabitants of the earth? They were each given a white robe and told to rest a little longer until the number would be complete. Pliro, both of the fellow servants and of the brothers. Who were soon to be killed as they themselves had been killed. Imelontes apoktenaspa os keafti. To the souls that he claims to see, John attributes special stature, since they were slaughtered, sphazo, because of dia, the word of God, and their testimony. In John's estimation, such suffering cannot be avoided, but is, as Roloff maintains, the inevitable consequence of the testimony for Jesus. Although in two other visions, John will reiterate this expectation of inevitable suffering, it is highly unlikely that any of John's visions betrays an actual widespread historical persecution. So says Price. Price! Yet this is precisely what John's theology requires. An imminent, massive slaughter an imminent and massive slaughter.
Oj, oj.
Oh dear, what can we say of the faithful to be the occasion for the response that his message requires? John also ascribes to these slain souls an imprecatory power of vengeance against the enemies of the faith, construing the enemies broadly as the inhabitants of the earth.
Yes. Yes.
I do not get it. In the cataclysmic destruction wrought on earth upon the opening of the sixth seal, we see that the demand for vengeance is a far cry from the theology of turning the other cheek or of loving one's neighbor as oneself. Indeed, Revelation 16:5-7 lauds the justice of such devastating judgments against the inhabitants of the earth. In Revelation 18:20-21 and 19:1-2, John encourages rejoicing over God's judgment, which at the great banquet of God will include birds gorging on the flesh of the enemies of the faithful. Oh dear.
Nami, 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 nami.
I don't know nami, but it therefore stands to reason that Jesus's breaking of the fifth and sixth seals offers a prime example of how John assigns value to the martyr's anticipated suffering. According to Revelation, the symbolic capital of their suffering is shown by the place under the heavenly altar and white robes. The martyr's future vindication will be demonstrated by havoc on earth and by the former's persecutors' desire for death. I will not stop at death this time. I will read a bit more. Between the opening of the seventh seal, 8:1, and the entrance of the seven trumpet-blowing angels, 8:6, John repeats the assertion about Christians' imprecatory prayers and the devastating effects on the earth. This time the prayers come not only from the martyrs in heaven, but from all the saints.
No.
Another angel with a golden censer came and stood at the altar. He was given a great quantity of incense to offer with the prayers of all the saints. Thais prosevches ton agion pandon. On the golden altar that is before the throne, and the smoke of the incense with the prayers of the saints. Rose before God from the hand of the angel. Angels flying high above. Then the angel took the censer and filled it with fire from the altar. And threw it on the earth. And there were peals of thunder, rumblings, flashes of lightning, and an earthquake. Ta-dum, ba-dum. So 1888. Here I think it's fit.
Page 166. With the word earthquake.
The earthquake.
Earthquake. We do like this. Earthquake.
To be remembered.
The rotating page. Earthquake.
The earthquake page. I think about the earthquake that trembled in 1887, Michelson, Morley.
But this is a holy number, 1888. Actually, in Gematria, 888 can stand for Jesus Christ. If you take out the numbers.
Let's go for some quotes. B, page 163. And already on the first line there, instead of granting such an assurance of the salvation in the present, John offers justification by conquering or endurance. If the author of Revelation addresses some Christians who embraced such Johannine or similar soteriology, the exhortations of Revelation 2:3 would have the effect of taking away a presumed standing and stipulating future requirements upon the attainment of that same standing. Salvation is already made. The bad guys have already been conquered. It is also, I think this is very similar to S1 and S2 of the previous lecture of 1887, where the comparison between the two needs criterion. Without criterion of use, practice, there will be no way. It will be once more the Beetle box, and we can't know the inside. Kelhoffer's explanations here is also something to have a look at, because they are not founded in tradition, liturgy, or how we do deal with these things. It takes actually a private language stake. Being not grounded in practice, there will be no criterion, and there will be no way of telling the difference between his uses of one word against another one. We we enter to the academia of empty concepts. We cannot understand. Understanding comes only in practice. The observer needs to be present and involved, and having done things the same way, something that we often call iteration. Some of you might remember my example with the caña, a Spanish word. For every time repeated, it gains more sense. You cannot follow a rule only once, because then it will not be understandable what you are saying. Of course, the words of revelation has meant, and they have meant what they always meant, but using rule number 2 to circumscribe and all of a sudden say that Barchel is not married or something of the sort, that will fall flat. On page 164, under the rubric Revelation 5:6 states that Jesus is worthy to break the seals on the scroll because he was slain. Oti esphagis. That was what made him worthy. His worthiness came from the fact that he was slain. This, I think, is not understandable if you keep a linear time, but the more accessible, expansive time will be able to bring in both meanings. So already when Jesus was alive, he was about to be slain. The two moments coexist, so to speak. And the one is making cause of the other, and vice versa. To some extent, that notion of time coming in and coming out is the Klein-Bottlian time. It's an interpenetration. We mentioned in the previous lecture Stephen M. Rosen, but interpenetrative time takes in the future as well as the past simultaneously, so to speak. To bring life, for instance, Zoe, to bring salvation. It is already present, but at the same time, not present. on page 165. It begins with this funny note that there was no widespread historical persecution. Once more, I would say that is a private, price. It's a private language argument. It doesn't make sense.
Let's check the footnote.
Yeah. It becomes just words you read, and they lack substance. They don't have reference to anything of a criterion. And it's a bit like claiming that I can from the inside see the difference between red and white, or I can see the sameness between one species of bird and another bird of the same species. No, it's a grammatical thing. It's deeply casted in language and our life world. And twisting it like this remains of little impact on anything real. Doesn't have an impact in either direction. Maybe a neutralizing impact, if any. The last quote, I won't read the whole thing, but on the next page, 166, it is just astonishingly beautiful. And by taking the text apart, the beauty disappears and its message. I read one sentence to just give an example. Another angel with a golden censer came and stood at the altar. He was given a great quantity of incense to offer with the prayers of all the saints on the golden altar that is before the throne. Left hemisphere wants to take that apart, take the words singularity, check for their meaning, put them together like you would take apart a human being bone by bone, and in the illusion that you will keep the meaning or the Zoe of the decapitated and parted person. Sorry for the horrible metaphor, but this is revelation we're talking about, and usually is quite gruesome. No, you cannot cut into the text. In the same way you cannot cut into a painting. Remove the smile of Mona Lisa. Here it is. This is the essence of the painting. It is the smile. And I put it in my private box. So taking apart the Bible, taking apart Revelation is cutting out the meaning, because only in plurality comes singularity, and only in singularity can plurality live, exist. And removing the wholeness by not going into the whole. Once more, I'm inferring Stephen M. Rosen's. Going into the Klein bottle is both whole and wholesome. Do not cut out, do not make an anatomy lesson of it, these beautiful texts. Kalle, please come and join.
Thank you. Let's go to page 20, the PDF.
Indeed.
To the crowns. Crowns. Yes, let me see. So in the printout, it's page 162. David Owen and several other scholars argue persuasively that in two chapter 2, verse 10, the reward is posthumous and carries connotations of struggle and victory, hooray, in athletic contests. By vying in accordance with the rules of the competition, the believer who emerges victorious will receive this reward. And then I jump here. Edward Laws, Jürgen Roloff, however, unpersuasively dispute this connection, maintaining that the heavenly crown is different from the crown received in an athletic competition.
I wanted to take that one too, yeah.
So this is to take once again the family metaphor by Wittgenstein. The point of the family metaphor is that you cannot never ever establish sharp, distinct categories. And here, what is the common denominator? Is the crown. And a crown, heavenly crown, cannot never be completely dissimilar from a earthly crown that you won in competition.
No, I wouldn't.
So it's a false, sharp distinction. Of course, there is a distinction, but it's not sharp. That is the point. It's never sharp. So it's like there is we shouldn't use the word like completely different or even different. It gives the wrong connotation.
It does, and for something to be abstract, it must be casted in a material fashion. It's the criterion.
And there is. I must admit that I disagree with most of the things that Kelhoffer says in this paper. And one of the things that I disagree with him is that he almost never agrees or allows for the possibility of double entenders.
Yeah,
okay. Only once does he agree that this can be ambiguity, and it was in this case because it suited his purpose. The purpose of the paper, I think. Okay. And in this it was that porneus can have a wider sense than to fornicate. So fornicate, porneus literally is only to have sex, illicit sex. Okay. But he wants also to say that it can also mean have fornication in religious sense, in that you can have fornication with false gods, idolatry. So porneus can also mean idolatry. So that is the whole. His only double entendre. While we have pointed out that there are a lot of double entendres.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Like Martus is the most obvious example. Then you have the dia, that thea in modern Greek, that he only takes into meaning because of. While we observed it can also mean to the purpose of testimony of Jesus Christ and so forth. And so forth. But there is one good thing actually from today's lecture that I do agree with. I do agree with Kelhoffer with one thing today, and that is, let me go there now. It's to be fair to Kelhoffer. He does say something good. Let me see. So it's actually completely his point. He borrows partially from Süssle Fiorenza. So Süssle Fiorenza writes like this: whereas Revelation expresses with Honikon, the one who conquers, a condition for future salvation of Christians, and uses the past tense of the verb only for Christ. First John speaks of Christian victory, not as a condition still to be accomplished, but as an act which is already achieved. So here we must, he doesn't spell it out, but there is this historic person, Apostle John. He, according to the church fathers, or at least some of them, he wrote, most church fathers thought that the Apostle John wrote both the Gospel of John and the 3 letters of John, including this one, 1 John, 2 John, and 3 John, and then the book of Revelation. So the Apostle John would have written these 5 things. So this is the but here, okay, I see. Okay. This is but there is actually, in this case, there is actually a distinction. Yeah, now I don't discuss this issue, but I could actually discuss it. But so Kelhoffer then comments According to 1 John 5, verses 4 to 5, for example, one's present standing as a believer is a matter of certitude. Being born of God or believing in God is tantamount to conquering the world. In particular, this illustrates that John's prophetic oracles in Revelation 2:3 reside within a different soteriological universe than that of justification by faith. Instead of granting such assurance of salvation in the present, John offers justification by conquering. That is, John offers revelation. So forth and so forth. So the point is here. So these two letters, if we could say, to simplify, we could say that the John in Book of Revelation is more like a Roman Catholic. He thinks that you actually have to do works to gain salvation. While the John of First John is more like a Protestant one. That is, your salvation is already gained.
It's already accomplished.
Indeed, and then therefore this is very apt, this comment, certificate of faith. So you have this certificate of faith alone is the view that you have in First John. So is it possible that in the Bible, that is in this case Revelation and First John, you have two different views of salvation? I say yes, because I think that is what makes it exciting.
Yeah, of course. It makes it have meaning, I would say also. Makes it have meaning.
And I think this is actually, this doesn't, so to say, reject the possibility. So this is again not against the possibility that the same author could have written two letters. He's expressing the two different points of view at a certain moment.
Indeed.
Sometimes your Christian salvation is acquired into a certain sense, but in some contexts you have to still do work. So you can say you can be both Catholic and Protestant. So actually, in this case, we can be generous and say both are right.
Yeah. Well, good. I like that comment. Should we maybe, because I have a problem with my screen as well here.
Yes, let's end there and
see if I can turn the recording
off. Hooray to Kelhoffer that he actually says something that we can agree.
I'm very happy for that. Let's see here if I can. Thank you very much, Kalle Lundahl, for your comments. And thank you, everyone, for participating. And I'm sorry about the mechanical problems we had today here. I still haven't been able to.